Labdien! Hello to everybody. Let's start. My name is Kārlis Krasniņš. I'm managing partner at Prudentia in Riga office. I'm glad to be here. It's not my first time and sure not last one. I'm always happy to see young men and women here in this room and being ready for new challenges. And today we have these nice people here that we will, together with them, have a discussion regarding company valuation. Thank you, guys. Thank you, ladies, that you are here. Thank you to my colleagues, Alexandros and Elina, who helped, and other colleagues to organize this event. Thank you for SSC that we have good cooperation with this school for a long time. A lot of employees in Prudentia are coming from your school, and sure will come more. And 16 years we are doing company valuation in Latvia, organizing Top 101. 3 years we are doing the same in Estonia. Last year we did Top 30, the most valuable companies in the Baltics. This year with our partner company Confidentus in Lithuania, we will do Top 101 in Lithuania. And by all of this, of course, we can see a lot of interesting data, a lot of analysis. We see what are the national or regional champions of our region. And we can see different industries, what are the differences, what are the common things in 3 countries. We can analyze industries, analyze companies. And of course, we do see a lot of new companies coming in. And nowadays, unicorns are very popular here in the Baltics, and especially our colleagues from Estonia are probably national champions in unicorns per capita. Like every week we do have in Estonia some new unicorn. Yeah, let's continue like this. And of course, in Latvia, we last year had as well Printful, our unicorn Latvian company in the Top 101. Actually only Latvian operations, because global operations are on different entity. This is not counted, but it's interesting aspect to analyze. And yeah, that's I think really good. Our top, as I said, when half of the companies in top will be listed on Nasdaq or on other stock exchanges, then we will stop to do top, because then the mission may be accomplished, but it's hopefully will happen. And companies will go and we'll have like listed companies, transparent, good part of our economy and society. So that's actually is a mission that we want to help the businesses and people, students, society with our top to get better understanding how the companies are evaluated, why companies are going bust, why unicorns are coming and going. So all those issues you can better understand looking to our top and having this discussion. And top is not only for top to be, but to have this discussion, to have this kind of challenges, and to have these people, smart people here to have some talk with you. And please ask questions, be part of discussion. We are here as well to see you in Prudentia. So we are especially in Latvia and Estonia looking for new people, have a praxis and internship in our company. So you are welcome. So by the way, our colleagues in Estonia, they did last year a very good job. By first time in Estonia, they did prepared tech top of most valuable 25 companies in Estonia with Estonian links on the roots as well, not only registered in Estonia but in other countries, but having Estonian shareholders or employees. So that's got a lot of attention and interesting discussion, and for sure I guess with time we will have this kind of top for all Baltic countries. So that's a very interesting angle to be discussed and analyzed. So floor is yours, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Let's start our discussion, and not to waste time. Everyone, when he starts kind of like discussing the first question, just tell who you are and present yourself shortly, and we go ahead. And as we talked, we'll try to talk by stages and through the investment process. And let's start with the looking at the what is the is all right with my microphone, I guess. And what underlying prerequisites do you think are the most important for startup growth into unicorns? And hundreds of startups are made every year. Some companies like Printful in Latvia prevail and reach their goals, but others perish. How much of that is luck, and how can we improve those? In our side, then follow on.
Thank you. I'm Indars Aščuks. I represent NASDAQ. I'm the CEO of NASDAQ CSD, and we operate in four markets, the three Baltic markets and Iceland, actually. But NASDAQ is, of course, a global company, and we have that privilege together with Prudintia arrange for this. When it comes to startups, I'd say that for the first initial seed phase, support is there. The acceleration funds, they do work. I think in Latvia we often have that support a bit too fragmented than maybe that would be preferred. We have this tradition of, like feudalism, that each ministry is responsible just for their part, and that's it. So I guess some more lateral matrix cooperation between economics ministry, the LIA, the investment agency, would be preferred, but support is there. Where I believe we can do better job in Latvia is in terms of openness for talent. We come from background of fears of Latvian percentage in population, fears that some foreigners would take our jobs for good reasons, but probably it's time to open up. There are still some old school requirements for attracting foreign talent, like highest degree in education. Why to have it? I mean, startups know what they need, what they want. If they're ready to pay decent salaries, like 5,000 a month or whatever, that's probably good enough. And we talk now about the Ukraine situation, and in some way there could be opportunity to attract some of the workforce from there. But again, I'm not sure we're doing what we could to be really successful. I think if somebody ends up now in Latvia, it's more like coincidence or by accident, or maybe they have some family relations. We probably can do a better job there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the leaders pointed out that the bureaucracy and fragmentation maybe in our support somehow. So maybe one of our Estonian friends, Prudentia, Estonian partner in Indrek, can take from here and say how does it look in Estonia, which obviously seems to have less of bureaucracy and fragmentation, judging by the results so far at least.
Yes, my name is Indrek Kuldekil. I'm from Tallinn. I'm a Prudentia Tallinn partner. Yes, of course, there is no, I don't see, our company is mostly involved in hello? Okay, much more. Now it's working. Yeah, thank you. Yes, it's in Estonia there is maybe no such kind of problems to organize, and now there is a lot of support by environment. There is a lot of companies who are sold, and the founders are giving back to society their knowledge, not only money but the knowledge, and we see the growth of startups a lot. There's approximately 6,000 startups now in Estonia, But it's not maybe the main topic of startups, that there must be a big amount of the startups. If I recently, 3 years ago, visited Israel, and if I read the news, then they see decrease of the number of startups. So it's more not to do in volume, but to scale up the existing companies. So I think we grow up from these problems what you have today in Latvia, but and moving to another level to find a way how to scale up these young stage companies. Yes, I think we are in the middle of summer. I think so. Yes.
Okay, so we have among us venture capitalists, and which who will finally tell. But what I heard is that effectively we have this story that somehow Estonians were watching the Finnish TV and were learn how to do business by watching all these Danish and other shipping series and so on, and then they started understanding that there is no money here. So you don't fight for the dividing, but you fight creating new companies and selling them to Scandinavians and then to everyone else. And then when you got the money, you kind of help the up-and-coming people. So how the Latvian venture capitalists look at this, at these early stage problems, and so to say?
Yeah, so just introducing myself, I'm managing partner of Change Ventures, which is the largest pan-Baltic seed fund. So we operate across all 3 Baltic states, investing at pre-seed and seed stages in companies. And one of our best performing companies in our second fund is 2 SSE graduates. So to inspire you, I'll come back to that in a second. But I think the question about Skype is very relevant. So the short version of why Estonia is doing so fast, with all due respect to the Estonians, is an accident. So Nicholas Zenström from Skype, the Swede, he was working with Estonian programmers, and they started Kazan. From there, they started Skype, and that Skype success happened early enough that the snowball from reinvestment, talent, starting new startups, so Wise, Pipedrive, Bolt, all of these have ex-Skypers. So that snowball has just been rolling longer, right? So in Latvia, we don't have to worry. The snowball is rolling here. It's just, you just have to be patient, because companies that are worth $1 billion don't get built overnight. It typically takes at least 10 years, if not longer, right? So there's nothing fundamentally different about Latvia, in my view, than Estonia or Lithuania in terms of the capability of doing that, and Israel is a great example. So I present our region as the next Israel, and in fact, on the metrics, we're looking actually performing very well versus Israel even, and the potential is even better in my view. But I think the most important thing is to understand that building a company worth $1 billion is a very different, or more, right? So Bolt is worth, what, $8 billion now. So that is a very different proposition than building a local business. So you have to be thinking about building a global business from day one, and that's fundamentally different from other businesses. So the 2 SSE grads I mentioned are the co-founders of Planet 42, which is a company we invested in at seed stage. So their first market was South Africa. They do emerging market car subscription service. The next market they've entered is Mexico. They have 0 operations in the Baltics, a handful of accountants, basically. But they're tackling big markets where they can grow a company fast. And you know, we were having a short conversation about valuations here. The difference between a company that has a valuation far in excess of its current profitability or losses is related to how fast it can grow, right? So, and you can only grow fast if your main markets are very, very large and have much growth potential. Hence, the Baltic states are simply too small as home markets in which to build $1 billion value company. Now, so we do invest in companies that have businesses here, but effectively we look at that as a pilot project, right? So, you know, you Membi is a Lithuanian edtech startup. They started in Lithuania, where it's called DigiKlase. For us, that's an experiment. It's great, generate some money, figure out how to do things, but unless they can scale across, in their case, across Europe, it doesn't have the potential to generate a company that's worth $1 billion. And I think the thing that you see in Estonia is that there is now so many people who have experience working in companies that can build products that are used by millions and millions of consumers, or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of businesses. Those people, that experience is what carries over into generating new companies, and the capital they earn from successful exits or shares they've sold is then reinvested, and so that capital and knowledge together makes the snowball roll even faster downhill. And that's kind of the secret of everything. So in Latvia we have some great companies which have, we already have Printful. Printify will also be a unicorn. We've backed the Printify investment. But there will be more, but it takes time to build a company that's that big. And what we do need to do in the early stage, we need more entrepreneurs. We need more of you to decide that you're going to go down the admittedly very difficult path of building a company that's very big and growing very fast. But there's obviously a lot of rewards out there if you can make it happen. So the more of those people we have, the faster we'll get more unicorns.
Sounds very promising that Estonians were happy to agree, but I agree with that, although they managed to use the luck in that sense. But nevertheless, I have here one venture capital cap as well. Representing the ZGI investments, and I have to say we're still investing in our fourth fund, and somehow it has been more difficult to get Latvian projects to finance. Okay, we're not very early stage. We are looking for expansion capital investments, but Estonian and Lithuanian companies have been more at our door, and I have to say somewhat better prepared, and with more from our perspective, more viable business plans. And so even being the patriot, of course, of Latvia in any sense, it still leaves the question open why we don't see more people there. So okay, finally we getting to the brave lady among us. Yeah.
Hi, I am Beate, General Manager of Omniva in Latvia, and actually I would like to call Omniva Estonian government startup, if I can say so, because maybe a lot of people are not aware that actually our mother company is Estonian Post. And 10 years ago they made a brave decision to invest also in Latvia and establish a great solution for the customers to receive parcels in the parcel machines. And the interesting thing is that the first manager who actually took off this business is a graduate of SSC, and he's Estonian as well. So he was managing this company for 5 years, and the interesting thing happened that we were not the first ones in the market offering this solution. There was actually Latvian startup before us called Pasta Stacija. And they were the biggest at that moment. They were already for a few years in the market, but actually they are not here anymore. And they eventually, a few years ago, they were brought by Latvian Post. But what I wanted to say with this, it's actually, if I compare maybe the mentality and then the way how different companies are doing the business, I think what is a trend that I have noticed myself, that Latvian startups, maybe they tend to wait for quick gains and maybe take out the dividends at the first opportunity rather than investing into development. But also from Estonian perspective and from maybe other countries' perspective, the companies are more focused on long-term growth rather than immediate gains. And maybe that has also been a success factor for Omniva, although it actually took 5 years until we became profitable doing this business.
Okay, very interesting. So, so it means that somehow either the local companies are more greedy, or they haven't learned one of the basic principles. What I learned early in the business. What's wrong? that big success in small country like the Baltics means small money, and a small success in big market means big money. So, but then you have to kind of like take your time to get to this big market. So the next one is a turnaround specialist, I would say, that is doing venture capital within his growing and successful company, which has been turned around from a rather unsuccessful story before that. So Andris, who as well recently has been elected the head of Latvian Employers Association and represents somehow, I mean, the entire our big company ecosystem, so to say. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Anders. I'm coming from very simple or conventional business, fish canning. My company is Caravel, and I'm co-owner and CEO of the company, and we are growing quite fast, not comparably with maybe some startup cases, but as a conventional business quite well, and doing business in all over the world in 46 countries. I don't know much about startups. The only my connection with them are when 100% cases when someone came to us to ask for some investments in startups, we said no. And that's the only case how I'm connected with that. Mostly what I would, when case about what we are discussing today, I would like to say that my evaluation on the entrepreneurship and also the startups as a part of that is that we have less than enough entrepreneurs at all in Latvia, and that's the as a second part also the startups. So if they are not enough in quantity, they cannot be also so much successful of them. And from my perspective, the biggest problem is the environment and business environment, and how trendy or you can say sexy or somehow is the business. And it comes to the questions of how the government or institutions are looking on that, how the financial institutions are looking at that, and I think that here we have a lot to do in Latvia to improve this climate. That entrepreneurship is something that must become trendy. The people who are doing that, or young people, must be more interested to start that. And it's not only about the climate around, it's also about the education. For example, I'm the entrepreneur only because I think that one of big parts is that I was not so clever to pass the exams to study here in SSA, and that's why I need to do something else to find out what to do, and I became a businessman. So I think that this is one of the global cases what we need to solve in the first time as a country, that this climate must become more and more attractive than it is now.
So it's not trendy enough to make money in Latvia, it turns out. Okay.
All right, Davis representing Printful, and I guess what I have to say is pretty much to summarize all of these people say what they said, right? I guess one thing we're missing, or we have quite a bit in Latvia, is fear, right, and lack of these inspiring stories. And basically, what we see with Draugiem Group, and right, what Draugiem Group has done with Printful, and what Printful now is doing with Printful Bits and starting new companies, we are experimenting constantly, right? We have, with Draugiem Group, we started 100 companies, and I think 90% of them failed, right? And we have some successful companies, right? But I don't think we have that much of sort of people starting this business. Maybe they lack a sort of inspiring story as they have in Estonia, right? Skype and what's to come after Skype. And we hope that Printful can be the inspiring story for new people sitting here, right? To actually try and experiment and start their own business. That's the first part. The second part I would like to say, I guess, also from the Printful experience is to focus on these big markets, right? I think here in Baltics we have quite good talent pool, but the markets are rather small, right? So, as colleague said, right, winning in small market probably will not make you very, very much money versus being very good or being good at larger market might help you, right? So I think what we should do is think bigger, right? Focus on those larger markets and looking at the markets that can scale and grow. So I think that's sort of my and Printful perspective.
Okay, so here's the next member of the panel who I think never had the problem with thinking too small and has been running ventures all around the Baltics, and not only, but in some places I deem too risky. So Henrik, your take.
Yeah, hi. I'm Henrik. I graduated from SSC Riga in 1997, so like a million years ago. I actually wanted to say that I don't think we should make it into a contest about Estonia or Latvia or anything like that. I myself, I have been an entrepreneur actually, and I can claim that I have been part of the LHV co-founding group, which became a unicorn, though a local billion-dollar company. And I wanted to say actually that if we think about the financial services, then obviously actually the early banking, Hansabank was a multi-billion-dollar business, and so on and so forth. So you should not always think that you need to basically have a great business idea that you will be able to take outside. You can also start locally and find your story, find what you're passionate about, and work with that. And I think maybe to take away also thinking about Latvian very successful Inbox or the Draugiem group, then I think it could have been a little bit different story in Latvia if Ruby Light would have been, let's say, in its social media investments would have been more transparent and inspiring, in the mid 2000s when they were actually very successful and invested in very large Russian social media groups. So they could have been actually this sort of a same success story that Skype was for Estonia, but just for whatever reasons, they did not make it into a kind of a local champion. But maybe from an entrepreneur's perspective, because I've been actually raising capital for different companies, I think one of the most important things is that you do what you like and you have staying power. So really, I think Andris mentioned here that it takes a long time to build a successful company. And the only way you can actually overcome all those sort of obstacles and difficulties that you will definitely have is by doing what you like and actually thinking outside the box and pivoting and doing all those things.
Okay, but I think just to stay with the early stage a little bit, I think we should okay, we have a diagnosis, but what we could do more actually. So is it an education, back to the school? Again, the thing the Estonians did a while ago, changing the education system, paying more, having larger schools, paying more to the teachers and so on, and then somehow, I don't know, more influential or the entrepreneurs, or what is it? Or are we still waiting until someone will strike big, get these billions of dollars in the account and start driving around in fancy cars and otherwise impressing young people who don't know what to do with their lives? But so I would like to get what we could do more to encourage more startup companies and entrepreneurs in Latvia. Is there anything we could do more? And then again, we'll get to the next. Can we do after that more for these very early stage companies to kind of survive? Can we nurture the good ideas or it's unrealistic? Okay, we'll go ahead.
I'm happy to take this. So first, none of the entrepreneurs we back drive fancy cars until they exit with lots and lots of money. They're busy spending all their time working. And I think there are things we can do. So I think education is one. So the foundation I'm part of, Tech Hub Riga, does startup school, we call it. So it's basically people who are want to be founders, learning about what it means to raise money, what does a pivot mean, what's product market fit, how do you think about growing businesses, digital marketing, all of basic stuff. And so I think there is still training and education you can do that will help people succeed, because you guys are all privileged to have an education that SSC offers you. There are many entrepreneurs out there who have less education and who still need help in figuring out. I mean, I have many conversations with my companies about some basic accounting concepts, which I'm sure will be very clear to you guys. But some of them are really important. Revenue recognition, for example, right? So, but some of these basic things are useful and can be trained, and so that's one. I think second, part of the reason I push the message about going outside the region, I don't know you can build a big company in the region, but I want to push the ambition of the founders in Latvia and the Baltics to think bigger, because we still come across founders who are very talented, but are not seeing bigger opportunities in front of them because they're worried about whether they could tackle them. And the answer is, until you actually try, you don't know. And people can do amazing things once they try. And so I think that ambition level still needs to be pushed, especially in Latvia. And that's one of the advantages Estonia has, is you have so many examples around you of people who have done things they themselves thought were impossible. Hiring that top salesperson from a Silicon Valley company, until you actually try and you succeed and someone next to you does that, you're not sure it's actually possible. It is possible, right? It's just very hard. And so this ambition and so forth, and having those examples is something that's, it's part of the reason the snowball takes time. But so the more of those we can generate, the more stories we can share, the faster this will happen. There are some things governments can do as well. Question I keep getting asked. They're limited, I would say, because governments don't build businesses. Governments regulate and serve the consumers to protect them. So, but there is a startup tax law in Latvia which is gradually getting better and better at supporting. Stock option laws in the Baltic states are the best 3 on the planet, bar none. Better than US, better than UK, better than Israel. Bar none. Latvia's, by the way, is the best. So there are things governments can do, to help startups succeed. But really, the main thing is having founders and supporting founders. Having more investors. So we'd love to have more angel investors in Latvia. Estonia has an unbelievably strong angel ecosystem, and also the final word on this is. You have to also remember where we are relative to others. So about 3 weeks ago, I saw some fantastic news. Italy has its first unicorn. And we're all like, really? Like, are you serious? Like, the first one? Italy? Yes, the first one. So the Baltic states, you guys are already way ahead of places like Italy in terms of being a place where you can build very, very big, successful businesses. So there's just more opportunity to come.
Okay, so as we have this diversity, not necessarily as was mentioned to have studied in SSC. So maybe Andris can as well come with some ideas what we could do as a system, as a country, to get more people up and starting startups and businesses. What's your take?
No, if you're looking on the long run, from my opinion, that first is education. You need to, from the early years, to train to children, then to school children, then to students that business is something that it's not easy way, but it's something very interesting and very long run things to do. And that's one point, education. Second is I think that as a society here, we need to get rid of fear to fail. That's very common in the environmental, in business environment, and that's not only about feeling inside that entrepreneurs are feeling afraid to fail, but it's also what about things and how other society, like banks, like government, like neighbors and everyone around are treating them after they fail once, and that's normal. And actually, when you by yourself, first time try that and failed, then after that you feel it's okay. But at the first time you are feeling very afraid, and I think this is attitude. It's one of the main cases why many are trying not to go into entrepreneurship, or are doing it very slowly, very careful way, so with no big ambitions, no taking up the risks and so on.
So it's a cultural thing in a way.
Yeah. We are coming from the agriculture basement, so everyone is very very stable and trying not to risk much.
Yeah, but I think the Estonians did the same. I mean, to a large extent. I don't see that there is much difference. I think genetically we're the same, as we know, and something else is at play. It's a cultural thing, okay, you can teach entrepreneurship. I read about that, but I think it still it's basically some percentage of the population who has the right complex of genes, which is pretty much ability to take the decisions with the lacking information. People who are doers, who want to do, and who are ready to take unduly risks, not calculated enough. If someone has all the information, calculates all the risks and everything else, he is too late to the game or doesn't start. So you have to be stupid to some extent, but very active in this process, and not being overwhelmed by the mistakes and drawbacks, and just keep doing, and that's ultimately some kind of like gene conflict, which is roughly 8-9% of the population in all the countries, and the question is where we lose them. If the Estonians have this, where we lose them, why don't they get up and so on? But okay, and yeah.
Right. I guess I can sort of, as a recent graduate, give my perspective. Right. I graduated from SSC in 2019. So, 3 years in the labor market, right? 3 years with Printful, and sort of you were asking sort of where are we losing those 9%, right? Why they are not sort of reaching the top and not starting their entrepreneurial journey, right? And I think that goes together to the education part, right? There are educational courses where you can actually teach sort of how to evaluate companies, what to do in investment pitch, but then there's also the educational part is experience sort of sharing, right? Companies who succeed coming to the sort of university graduates or students, right? And not only to the SSC, but to other universities as well. And trying to sort of persuade the message and tell about their story, and that's how to inspire those students. Because myself, I guess I lacked quite a bit of this startup education, which is not necessarily very hard skills, but to some extent more soft skills, until I joined the sort of labor market. So I think even SSC, we have maybe courses we could introduce, right? Things we can learn from sort of achievers, right? From Silicon Valley, etc. And then get that to the students, right? Educate them on maybe content they should listen to. I don't know how I built this great podcast or acquired great podcast, right? These are the things I learned in the labor market and got to know in the labor market. But I think universities and schools can help with that, and providing tools for these 9% to succeed in their entrepreneurial journey.
So you still have to be next to someone who and see how they're making the money, and in a way to show the ropes and get the kind of get influenced.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Indrek.
I just want to add, no difference between Latvia and Estonian ecosystem, but as you mentioned that we need to educate people, but who the founder is, it's is entrepreneur. You cannot teach entrepreneurs. You cannot show how. But you cannot learn in school. So it's very important to give this kind of person environment. I think in Estonia, because it's a very small country, it's in the beginning from 25 25 years ago, it's a very open economy. Very simple. Openness is one key word. All companies they are working very openly, and that's one key reason.
I could add that there's envy. You know, I remember in Estonia there was always this, where is our Nokia coming from? Like, you know, from a very early days when Finns had really made it big in telecom sector. And so maybe now we are actually at the birth of this envy of Estonian startups. So that's going to drive like the Latvian unicorns in the future. No, I mean, that's a joke, obviously, but I think this culture means a lot, like in a way that the role models or the understanding that actually the success is not like something which is like in textbooks, but you can actually see those people and you know what they did.
Yeah, as we know, the culture eats the strategy for breakfast. So, but the question is then how to improve it. But okay, finishing off with this at this stage for concerning the startups and the early stage. Maybe any questions here at the moment you would like to ask? Yes, please. Yeah, we can. But the question.
Quite many success stories in the Baltics lately, such as JFab, Nordigen, Pipedrive, Veriff, Planet 42. From Baltic investors' perspective, has it somehow made it harder to invest as these success stories, they attract more larger VC funds from abroad?
Yeah.
So, is this working? Yeah. Good enough. Yeah. Let's see if it's switching on. Battery's low.
So I think we were talking now about early stage. So still at the early stage. So in my view, the VC industry is sort of in two layers. So you have the early stage pre-seed and seed, and then you have A, growth and beyond. The A, growth and beyond stage of funding is now truly a global market. So it's not even a regional, pan-European, US, it's really a global market. So we had a company that in Lithuania, Interactio raised a Series A round, $30 million Series A round led by Silicon Valley Fund that didn't even fly here before they closed the round, right? So it's a different world. And so that's the Series A, B, and beyond. Early stage pre-seed and seed, one of the reasons I'm at that stage is because you can still compete. I don't have to, win against all the big Silicon Valley funds on every single deal, right? So still at the early stage, the businesses are much more precarious. There's much more hands-on involvement needed to help people succeed. And so there is much more value to having an investor that's physically close and nearby and can support. So there's more room for local investors to win. So, but I'm done with my comments. So.
Maybe this one, maybe I can use it.
Did that answer the question?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so it's not working? So now we're at the root of the problem, so we can't get our technology right, even if it's not ours.
Maybe let's try it.
So we should
Somewhere.
let's try it.
You can put it maybe on your shirt, like higher.
Something like this?
Something like that.
Is it working? Okay, so yeah, we interrupted as a result. Anders, can you finish?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's a bifurcated market now. As regards technology startups, high growth venture funded startups, that's, all sorts of other markets are not bifurcated, but that particular market is.
Yeah, I don't think that our market is overheated the way the United States market some places.
Well, if you ask the investors who lost 40% on their shares, you wouldn't say it's overheated anymore. So,
I mean, venture capital
And they will chase the maddest ideas, but now they're investing at 40% lower prices than they were 3 months ago. So, the venture industry adjusts to public markets as well. It happens first at the growth stage, which is the closest to the market. So if you're investing in a company at 250 million euro valuation in the expectation that it's going to be $1 billion company and you have a 4x return, if the $1 billion companies you're referencing against are now worth half a billion, you're only now looking at a 2x return on your investments, so you're wondering if 250 million is the right price. So that adjustment happens pretty fast, actually, in 3 to 6 months in the markets. And then that gradually, comes down the chain, which takes a while, but that's a slow adjustment, I'd say.
Okay, so maybe we can kind of like move on, if no one wants to add for this here, the kind of like later stage investing. Okay, I'll write this one then. The later stage concerning this let's say expansion and the investing ecosystem for the startups beyond the prototype but when we grow the business, are we as good in Latvia for the growing for the next stage as we should be, and are the VC funding available at the moment? I personally think it's a lot of available right now in the Baltics, but maybe there are different views. And I think in world and as well in Europe, in many places they're trying to create the Silicon Valleys, so to say. The question is, are there any chances for Silicon Points in the Baltics beyond the wishful thinking, as I formulated that? Or that's not the way to talk about that. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, because I'm not, let's say, day-to-day operating on a sort of like an investment vehicle level, so it's Andris most probably is the best person to talk about that. It seems to me that there is like person, let's say, who has been raising capital over the last 5 years quite a few times. I would say that there is actually quite a lot of capital around. I think the question is that a lot of these entrepreneurs who have exited or partially exited or have given birth to teams who have made the money through options, they are all investors nowadays, and they are actually quite professional. So they do know quite well what they are looking at, what are the kind of key parameters for success for themselves. And I think it's a sort of game of numbers. The more numbers financing options you have, the more you will find those people who either believe in you or do actually understand the business case. Because I mean, there is most probably quite a lot of also specialization in industries or investors' views as well, at least some people who have experience in doing one type of investments into sort of certain companies. They might not necessarily look at others. And so obviously the more investors you have around, the more likelihood you have in getting there. So I'm actually quite optimistic, to be honest with you. And I think this sort of the European funding that has gone into many of those funds as well, it has really helped to put that industry on its feet. And if we compare it, let's say, to 10, 15 years ago, then I think it's a good time to start a company. Yeah. No, I mean, like, I think the Silicon Valley is the hashtag Estonian Mafia. I mean, I think you need to be very clever about branding, and I think like sort of that and most probably it kind of like in Latvian case, it should be something as well, like how you brand yourself and how you basically make yourself sticky. But more than this branding itself, I think it's really the professional networks that emerges from those startups that have actually brought in Silicon Valley investors. And then if you have an Estonian investor who has that network to basically bring in also other investors, then that sort of helps. So Silicon Valley is also a brand name. So Estonian Mafia is as much of a brand name, and I think kind of a question is how to, maybe there should be something like a key word for Latvia.
Small, you have to stick together, so you go to the same synagogue.
Yeah, and I think the role of Silicon Valley, as it has been over the past 20 years, will never be the way it was, right? So I went to business school in the Valley during the first dot-com boom. It was insane. The Valley is still a place where there's amazing businesses, amazing investors, etc., but it is no longer the nub of the universe, and it is no longer the only place you can build a massively successful company. You can do that out of any place on the planet now. Any place. Some places more likely, the Baltics being higher up on the list, but you can do that anywhere, and that's because the capital is no longer only concentrated there. The expertise is no longer only concentrated there, and the fact that the world's top venture investors, Sequoia, Andreessen, Index, Axel, and everyone are running around all 3 Baltic states looking for investments means this is also a place where you can generate massive success stories, right? And so that is fundamentally different from what happened before. And you can read all about it. So the cloud had an impact. The pandemic had an impact with capital being more widespread. All sorts of things. But that's the outcome, and that's great news for everyone here, because if for the class of '97 didn't have that opportunity that you guys have now. So it is I'm a huge believer in the next 10-15 years because it's fundamentally different opportunities.
Right. Okay. It's okay? Now it works. Finally. Yeah, maybe Beatrice want a word on this? No. Yeah. Or you already did. I didn't notice. Sorry.
Talking about that middle phase for the financing, representing Nasdaq, I can say that now stock exchange can also play an increasing role in that stage. Of course, still it's financial investors, so it's not smart money. I guess every startup would wish to get like Skype and TransferWise guys investing, because that opens totally another level of doors and windows and so on for future growth. But when it comes to financing, that's available. What we've seen over the last year, and it's literally 1 year, at Baltic exchanges, Nasdaq Tallinn, Nasdaq Riga, very small companies come to the markets and raise money. And that's very different how it was, because stock exchange was kind of perceived as a means for different life cycle, even exits if you like. Now we've seen 5 companies literally raise 1 million or less over the last year. The last one yet this year, Aerobot. They raised 600K, 4,000 investors. So we talk about literally less than 100 euros per investor that are there voting with their money, and companies can use it. Or there was Hagen Bikes. They are into cargo bikes. 6,500 investors, and they raised just 500,000. So that was not possible just years ago, because IPO process associates with a lot of cost, and consultants have to be attracted and so on. These days, together with the industry, we at Nasdaq have succeeded to create that ecosystem, and it's rolling. So with relatively little fixed investment, you provide the information to the market through information memorandum. The placement mechanisms are there. There is a lot of money. I can only agree to. There is a lot of money available, especially if you've heard then in Estonia last year there was a controversial pension reform executed where people were allowed to withdraw their second pillar pension money. So I think it's not good, but luckily some of that money that was withdrawn from the system came back into the market. So there's a lot of investors that are ready to invest, and I think that's another opportunity for startup guys to get access to.
So it's effectively through the stock exchange.
If you like, but I mean, again, like I said, startups probably want those unicorn exiters as their primary investors, of course. But you know, having Nasdaq listing is not too bad either. It adds a lot to credibility, to the visibility, and of course, there are checks that you are under the supervision of the FSA if you're listed company, and you know it's checked. It's certainly safe to invest these days on stock market. There's a lot of protection. It's very different with different kind of platforms where there are no even basic checks and guarantees. So I don't want to talk about that. But what I can say is that if it's a listing, either on main market or be it trading on alternative markets like First North, the security for investors is there. I mean, sometimes in Europe we overdo because of what you said. You can easily invest in all kinds of platforms just like that, and then when it comes to investments in stock markets, then suddenly it becomes so difficult, you know, with the KYC process and so on. So I don't think we always strike the balance well there in terms of regulation in EU, but anyway, I leave it there. It's safe to invest in stocks which are listed at Nasdaq, that's for sure.
Wanted to say it from as a support to that stock markets do work. I mean, I'm representing here today Indexo, which is sort of a startup. Okay, it's not global, it's local, but we have been quite successful in disrupting the retirement management or pension fund industry, and are actually going to get a bank license. So and then part of that is going to be actually listing our stock or shares in the stock exchange. So, but it does work for certain founders and certain startups, but it's not always the case. So I think as an entrepreneur, let's say if we kind of try to give here you a rule book or something, then you need to basically see also what is the management effort that is needed to keep a company listed, and you know, how much sort of strings and get attached to you because of that. Plus also I think, like again, from a venture capital industry, especially in I don't know, like A, B, C, I don't know, the rounds, you might have actually shareholder agreements, which are, let's say, much more difficult to have in a sort of a context of stock exchange. So it a little bit depends on who are your early founding partners as well, or funding partners.
Are Baltic stock exchanges ready for the SPACs? Already kind of like the carte blanche companies going?
Yes, actually, as we speak, the documentation is under the preparations, and in few months' time there's going to be also added that piece as specific regulation. You already now you can have a SPAC type of listing, but there are some nuanced regulation in support of that, and that's being worked out, and probably in a few months' time it's going to be there for the Baltic SPACs.
See a feeding frenzy for the takeovers and many interesting deals.
Just a small remark that in Estonia there was a alternative exchanges, Funderbeam. It's like similar, but it's again like First North, and the Funderbeam is for smaller companies. If you want to raise a significant amount of money, starting from 20 or 30 million, then probably you need to go somewhere outside. If you look the Estonian, we call this Estonian unicorns, 10 of them, but 5 at least they're local, and 5 are registered headquarters outside Estonia. It means that it's crucial to go outside to find the additional money outside Estonia.
Maybe what I could add to this discussion, maybe also to summarize that at least in my experience, what I have seen that each situation is unique. For one situation, it's great to go to stock exchange, especially if the company is more stable. But also I have seen that there are opportunities in Latvian market. And 2 of my friends, 3 years ago, they left their job because they came up with a great idea for a startup. And they were working in a bank in very good positions, and they decided to do their own company. And actually, they have succeeded so far, and they have even attracted here in Latvia an investor from India, who actually believes in the startup and its success in Indian market. So I think the world is full of opportunities, and you should be brave and do what you like, especially if you believe this idea.
One more further question for me would be, historically there are 2 kind of like peaks for the venture for the startuppers, 20 plus and then the 40 plus. And actually the people who start kind of like businesses 40 plus, they are somewhat more successful. So how is it in the Baltics? Do we have these young spirits out of the effectively the school, even if that school is a C, or the people who have kind of like been around and seen and then decide to create the companies? Any comments on that?
Comment, but I guess Printful, we had the founder who didn't go to, no, he went to university, right? But I mean, started working in Drogum from the beginning, right? That's Davis Siksnas, and then we also had a founder group who were serial entrepreneurs, right? And I guess 35 plus, or not sure on the age, but certainly about 30, right? So I guess maybe the mixture of both is a good fit in this context. But so yeah, I think that's a good fit. And maybe going back to sort of comment on the stock exchange and capital being available, I guess it is available quite a bit, especially for Printful was, right? But there was this comment that not sort of stock exchange doesn't work for all of founders, right? And I guess in Printful's story, we with the growth stage, right? We try to finance as much as we can ourselves, right? And then when needed, we try to attract. But obviously, being listed requires quite a bit of administrative work and etc., which would slow down a company, would make it more bureaucratic, right? And at the growth stage at Printful, we decided not to do it. We had the luxury to afford it, but yeah, we decided not to do it. So I guess it's very much a question whether you need it or not.
Okay.
Yeah, so regarding age of entrepreneurs, so there are many different kinds of entrepreneurs, all different ages, and they each have, advantages of their own. So we've backed some Membi was an example of a young Lithuanian founder team, and we have others that are much more experienced entrepreneurs we've backed. So they just have different backgrounds and different advantages. If you're 25, you have, on average, more energy than others, and you can just power through and do an amazing amount of stuff. On the other hand, if you're 40, maybe you have more experience, and therefore you make less mistakes, and so you can spend less time powering through those mistakes. So, they're all pros and cons, but I think the common thing is, as Jit said, there's ultimately a personal characteristic that people who are founders have, which is, they're comfortable taking significant risks, making decisions under great uncertainty, inspiring others, to follow a vision, a plan for the future, which is, has a high likelihood of not happening, but they're able to inspire people to go after that despite the risk, right? And so those are personal characteristics which typically either people have or don't have, but may discover if they try. And I think that's really the most important thing.
Okay. if no one wants to add, I have a further question. So it's very good that we have here on the panel the Printful and Andris bit, because Printful actually has been working as another Printful, but the Draugi group has been working as effectively as a venture capital fund. The inside, they got the money from Draugiem, from the first project, I guess, and then they funded lots of different ideas, and most of these ideas died or they extinguished them, and then kind of like effectively the inside the company they did the work like the venture capital funds do that, and the ratio 9:1 is a very familiar one, I think, or has been in this industry. And then Andris, who has as well a rather big company, who is saying no to at least all the outside businesses and focusing on his core competence and strategies, what we are not doing, not what we are doing. And then the companies like Draugiem Group compete with the venture capitalists like Andris and myself in ZGI. But I wonder if there are two models which somehow compete, or we are kind of like there's two sides of the same coin, these two approaches. In company, in-house venture capital, so to say, and open kind of like venture capital fund, the classical with the limited partners and general partners and so on. What's your comment?
Whether they compete or not, I'm not sure. I mean, in essence, they do the same thing, right? Printful, Draugiem Group had 100 ideas, right, or plus ideas, and what you basically get is you can test the idea, but then you have this administrative efforts and legal efforts and sort of guidance and perspective provided by the existing founders, right? And I think many companies has 100 nice to have ideas, right? That might be directly related to the business model or not directly related to the business model, right? And this in-house VC fund, right, gives you the opportunity to test them out, right? Maybe sort of project team wouldn't have resources to actually do it, versus you have this part of the business that can go and test them out. So I don't think they necessarily compete with the VCs, but that's a good thing that we have these, right? Inside funds that can allow testing new ideas and experimenting with new business opportunities, and to some extent maybe make it more efficient from the resource perspective, right? You don't have to go and raise money, right? You test it, you see whether it sticks or not, right? And then you either sort of scale it or abandon the idea, right? So maybe at the early stage it gives you more sort of freedom. You can move a bit faster. That's at least our perspective, right? But I don't think they really compete. One just has the sort of benefit of larger company that can help with all these things mentioned before.
Maybe some small comment on that. If it's two ways to do in-house investments in new projects or take them from outside. That most, I think the important part is how an entrepreneur is feeling more okay to put on risk own money or someone else, and then to maybe not to feel so good in relations with them, and that's the philosophy of each of different persons. Yes, and we are feeling more okay to spend our own or to lose our own money, then we are not feeling bad or sorry for someone else. So that's just our fail, and that's all.
Okay. Thank you. And Andris, what's your perspective on this? Or do you think it's the false question anyway? So it's just too...
No, so I'm not sure if there's competition. I think actually it's there's competition in some sense in the market for talent, because all the companies, regardless of how they're created or incubated, need talent to grow big. And so that is the market they mainly compete in, and ultimately, Printful and Printify are competing for customers at some point in a global market, right? But they're not really competing for investment dollars. I think the philosophy we have as a venture investor is is we are looking at all of our investments as standalone businesses, and we are very concerned that the founders of those businesses retain sufficient ownership such that they are highly incentivized to do unbelievably crazy and great and awesome things in order to build great businesses, right? And so, so that is why we actually we have not funded any spin-off companies from other. We do get approached occasionally to fund spin-offs from corporate entities where the parent company has a significant ownership, and we generally decline because for us it's really important that the people doing the work full-time, like morning to night, building the businesses, that they have a significant ownership stake, because we feel that's important in order to build a sizable company, at least in the model we operate. And I think that's one of the differences. And actually, I remember one other thing I wanted to add that I maybe didn't explain. So in regard to the founders, who are starting these companies, so for those of you who heard my previous comments and said, I'm not really ready to take those risks, I guess I can't work in a startup, that's also not the case. So you can go work at a startup someone else starts. You don't have to be the founder, and in fact, it's the best way to figure out if this is going to be for you, because you don't actually have to go raise the money and lead the company. You can watch someone else do that and see if you want to try it yourself. But it does mean you can work in a company, if they're any good, you can work in a company that grows very fast. So I actually spent 15 years of my career working as a early hire C-level executive in a bunch of different startups in the US, Israel, UK, where I wasn't a founder, and then I became a founder afterwards. And it's a great way to learn what fast growth and building businesses is about. So just to add a comment on that.
Yeah, because the learning process in the venture capital always is costing someone. It's better not to be the one picking up the bill, at least at the beginning.
There are different ways. Some people just, by nature, do nothing but start businesses, and that's just like obvious for them, right? But that's not everyone.
Okay. And do you want something?
No, I just wanted to add, but that you shouldn't really fear too much about this, let's say, asking other people's money. I think it's totally normal. It's the way how business has always been built everywhere. And I think, truly, I think in the Baltics, there are lots of angel investors now around operating through angel networks and other places. And these people already know quite a lot about their own kind of personal risk assessment. So when you go to them, if they have kind of highlighted themselves as investors, it means that they are there to be approached and asked for money, and they are ready to assess for themselves the risks that you are taking. So from that point of view, that's you should not sort of, I think that, you are somehow personally going to be always responsible. You are, but these people know what they're doing.
Maybe one more view about investment. If you compare Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, there is a differences. What I see that in Estonia, there investors are a lot of investors are founders who sold the companies. They openly and then they put the money in the new entities. In Lithuania, what we see that there is no no so much succeed stories, but in really they have it. But they have a lot of bootstrapped companies who never raise the money. They grow and they're profitable, and they invest in new entities. So in real life, if we look more deeper, yes, there is a little bit different situation. But they invest as well. It depends now what the founder or startup founder or in what stage they are, what kind of investor they need. There is, if you can choose, if you're a good company, good idea, you can make decision. Would you like to be an investor or who you didn't like. That's some VCs have more maybe questions or more they want more rights to them, and that's why maybe they afraid to get these VCs. They maybe rather give to friends who they knows or some local guys, and that's maybe one point of view.
Gradual approach to take the risks in a way, and for the entrepreneurs to be looking for the new business lines in this way through the kind of such. Okay.
Yeah, and in the end, there's no shame in building a bootstrap business that doesn't take money from anyone else, right? That's like you build a great business that makes money, super, right? It's like the whole VC startup thing is all sexy and everyone wants to raise, companies that, blah, 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 publicly valued and everything. And there's, among some of the very successful bootstrap founders, you can see there's this sort of, VC funded startup envy, that they'd like to see the actual tag on their company that it's worth $1 billion, but actually they like the trade-off that they have control over what they're doing, and that's a trade-off, right? And it's a choice that's valid.
Okay, so we moving, I think, getting closer to the end part of it. So, how successfully we help the transition to growth for our companies in Europe-wide and global markets, and are the VC players and banks up to the task and well connected to global VC players and financial industry to finance that growth? So are we helping well enough our companies to grow out of the markets? Okay, you told about the companies which start immediately in the global markets and don't have this local phase, so to say, but nevertheless, are we helping the good startup companies which probably have had several funding rounds graduate to bigger and grow into these unicorns, so to say? Are we doing enough, or what could we do? What we could do more or better?
So I think.
Maybe.
Yeah. No, I can add a comment that, look, the most successful companies simply don't need anyone here locally, to be totally honest. The Bolt founders started, they had some local angels, but at some point they figured out how to raise money in China and US and wherever else. But there are a lot of companies that are successful but not quite that successful that do benefit from having strong relationships. And so I think it's up to the investors here and the advisors and bankers and everyone to build relationships with the next round investors who can bring more capital. It's what we do every day. We proactively look to build relationships with investors all around the world that could be the next stage investors in the companies that we've backed already, right? And so, the more that those connections are tied into the Baltic states, the more those investors fly here, see how awesome these places are, the more investments will happen.
Yeah.
Maybe short comment that yes, it's growing. The investment flow is growing from outside, because they are even UK VC funds want to invest now in local in Baltic funds to present in this region, and that's it's only because through the local VCs they cannot I think found these companies directly, but they want to do it through with the local VCs.
I think from the capital point of view, I think things are pretty okay. But I think still there definitely needs to be this sort of a workplace experience, let's say, where people are connected to opening up new markets, thinking like innovative ways how to use the way how business processes are run, which has been also totally reshuffled from most probably 10 years ago, because of also startups are actively disrupting the way how organizations are run, or what you can do outsource or have inside your company. So, and I think that that most probably only comes with more, let's say, successful international startups having the teams ready, who have participated in launching the products in new markets and operating globally. But I think also that's the good news is that there are quite a few companies doing that nowadays, and I think I very much sort of support the idea that rather than taking, let's say, a financially comfortable job with an auditor or one of those Scandinavian banks, then it's actually much more fun, most probably, to go and test yourself out in a startup environment and get that actually very valuable experience, which you wouldn't be able to get when you are working for someone who maybe on paper offers you a sort of a slightly more job security and a slightly better paycheck.
Okay, but even for these companies, we and the Baltics, Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, we need these big companies in a way not to get away from our markets too soon, because we expect them from these national champions in a way to create, to help to kind of like nurture this local industry and have some trickle down effect and so on. The way it was with this Skype and other companies. If the people get away too fast and grow, probably as a markets we don't gain anything from that. Or am I wrong?
So I would disagree respectively. So I think the reality is that a business is made up of people, right? And so if you have, let's say, through seed stage, even pre-seed, if you have the main base of operations here, even if the company moves headquarters, even if the CEO and even the entire senior management team moves somewhere else because their investors want them, because there are bigger markets they're targeting, etc., you will build a significant base of operations here. I mean, we saw that with Skype. We've seen that with all of the success stories. Saw that with Vinted. Vinted actually had a huge Berlin office, which they actually largely shut down, and they've moved most of their operations back to Vilnius, right? And so, and I remember one of the first small exits in Latvia was a company called Cobook, which started about, 12 years now ago, and they were bought by an American startup, and that American startup basically asked the team all to move to the US. The founder and the two co-founders basically decided to move to Denver, but most of the team said, actually, no, we don't want to move, right? And so, that company left their product development office here, and they still have an office here. And Prezi was acquired by, Infogram was acquired by Prezi in the US. They still have the biggest office here of the Infogram operations. They're selling all over the world, and they're bringing knowledge and experience back here, right? So I fundamentally believe that as long as the beginnings of the business are here, there is absolutely nothing preventing you bringing a ton of value back here. And the reasons you move headquarters elsewhere are largely for reasons of access to capital, access to talent that you cannot get here, and for reasons of building a bigger business. That said, I do think it's even better if you can not move the headquarters out of the Baltics at all. And Bolt was the pathfinder in this sense. So Bolt has raised all of their funding rounds, and they still are Estonian headquartered company. It's a remarkable achievement, right, for a company that's worth over $8 billion. And the CEO has very basically point blank said, I want to raise my kids in Estonia. I'm not moving, and all power to him. And I think that is a great example. And in Lithuania, Interactio, that I said raised that $30 million round, was the first Series A round raised where it was US and UK investors investing into a Lithuanian headquartered company. We had lots of fights with the lawyers who said, it's going to be so much easier to just flip the company to the UK, and eventually they agreed, it wasn't actually that painful to invest in Lithuania, and we will see that trend happen. And there is a plus, so it is better, but it doesn't, you know, flipping the headquarters doesn't mean that everything goes away.
Wise, for example, when Wise was started, then the founder, one of the founders, was living in London, and the other was living in Switzerland. So, and they decided to actually incorporate the company in Estonia and do the business in Estonia. And let's say, okay, I would say that the labor costs and, like, you know, good people sort of start to more or less costs the same in Europe, right? So I think that in Berlin, a programmer or a product guy will cost the same as they would in the Baltics, but still there is this there is a simplicity of operating in a smaller market, and even that would be the case, I think, for all Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. It's because you are closer to decision makers, and you actually can impact also your field, like the regulation, which actually takes, like if you are a regulated industry, you can actually impact the regulation by being able to talk to people.
So I can add to Printful story, right? We also sort of started as US-based company in terms of operations, right? But all the sort of management team and sort of office people sit in Riga, right? And they still do, and even with the, raising money in the US, right? For the like recently, we still stay in Latvia, and we think we will. We are quite confident that we will. The management team and the other people will stay and create jobs here to help Baltic economy. And also, yeah, as mentioned, right? It's easier. We have better connections with governmental institutions. We can get things done quicker, faster, and then it's just makes much sense for us to stay here and remain as Latvian company.
And we're talking about the bigger startups at the pre-unicorn, so to say, or unicorn stage. Anything more what the stock exchange could do that, or because we understand that the Printful has been toying with the idea to get quoted on the Nasdaq or whatever, but in New York, I guess. But is there anything the local stock exchanges could help in that respect for the big relatively young up and coming companies, which probably sometimes are not profitable as we see in the States? I guess the Printful is profitable, but.
Well, I believe we're simply blessed having Nasdaq being represented in this region. I can tell that there are many larger countries that wish they had that kind of stock exchange represented locally. Nasdaq is the leading stock exchange in the world, and as I mentioned, what has changed over the last couple of years is that even very small companies can join the markets at little cost, having the first gains of visibility, and then later on perhaps becoming blue chips. And we've seen now, and partially that was actually related to COVID. Maybe people had more free time. They certainly had still sort of money, and many of them started in investing. So we've seen like tenfold trading volume. So there is also after trading liquidity, you can exit your positions. All of it is available, and local investor base is growing. I mentioned some examples of very small companies that have 5,000 or 10,000 investors, and some of them may become your loyal customers actually of that listed company. And then bigger companies like Enefit, brilliant example. Last autumn, they attracted over 60,000 retail investors. That beats any ratios in the world. So I believe this is unique opportunity that local companies, local startups included, have. Whether that's fit for them, that's another question. There was an example of Printful. Maybe at some stage you just don't want yet to be listed. It comes with its own requirements. You know, you may have you know, other markets considered, but I think you know, you can have a local option at Nasdaq. You can have Nasdaq Stockholm, which is European hub for many SMEs sectors. Again, fantastic ecosystem for micro investments, and some of the industries just list in Stockholm, like gaming being a perfect example. And then you go all the way to Nasdaq in the New York, which is still first choice for all technology companies, and that's the options. I think that you can't ask really much more from stock exchange to do in terms of startups development.
I think the challenge for Latvia in particular is to get those retail accounts opened. And, you know, everybody who dabbles here in cryptocurrencies or anything like that unholy, also consider investing into the local stock exchange, because I think people do actually, you know, have found a way of how to you know, invest, or what, let's say, I don't really call it investing, but that's my personal view. But if you were to sort of think how many accounts most probably are there, sort of chasing different investment ideas already on a very small scale, then if all those people would be converting into actually investing into local stock exchange, we would have actually, you know, quite a huge growth in people who would invest, and definitely a very good platform.
Yeah, but in Latvia, again, a few perfect examples from last year. Okay, these were not startups, but just known companies. Virši, the local petrol station, 10,000 investors. Remarkable. I mean, you know, all the companies are welcome to tap into that investor base. Different thing whether that's fit for that stage of the company. That's different story.
Anyone to add at this point? No, then we go for the last and before we take questions, which is okay. Thinking big was mentioned here already, but I think let's try to dream big, and where we could go with our startups and companies and unicorns and overall business development in I don't know, let's say next 20 years. So where we want to be, where we could do, thinking realistically at the same time aggressively about the companies and the markets.
So I'm gonna a little bit repeat myself. We can be better than Israel. So everyone's heard the Israel story, startup nation. There are books written about it. The Israelis are very proud of it. We can be better than Israel. We can be bigger than Israel, and that's absolutely possible. And you know, I think that's a goal that the three Baltic states could do together. None of them are big enough to do it on their own, but the three together is a viable size to, you know, present that. And I can tell you, this is the story I tell investors who I'm trying to sell investing in our fund. So the investors that Indrek talked about, I sell them a story of the Baltic states will be the next Israel, and believe me, it sells very well. It's a great story.
If we compare last year the technology top, then we see that there was a approximately $1 billion funding last year in Estonia. And this year, 3 months, there was the same number already. And if we just see the projection and look back what situation was 10 years ago, it was I don't know, maybe 8 million funding, and if we for example say that we grow 25% per year, there will be within 10 years approximately 6 billion funding per year, and altogether 30 billion funding. So that's might be like not utopic, but real thing.
there is a place for much more bigger activities, practically in any kind of economical parts in Latvia, because there is, as I have a feeling that, or how I'm evaluating that it's now everything for that is available. There's a lot of finance resources available. There is problems to allocate them. There is a Euro funds to help to in this early stage of growing or financing the investments later and so on. So the only thing coming back one more time is the ambitions. Generally, what you need to grow and to develop in the whole society, and the general environment and climate on the business side and government side.
I think that also, if we look at the education, this is really important part, and we have touched this today already a few times. And compared to when I was in high school or in university, actually there are so many more opportunities right now to create startup companies even in high school. This is quite a standard at the moment, and then this is something where we actually need to invest, and even maybe some successful startups could do more of their PR locally by visiting schools and then encouraging youth to follow this path. And I think we should share more these good examples that we have, and even those examples that have failed, just to encourage the people to be more brave, as I mentioned before, and to risk, and then even get big wins by risking. And another thing is a cultural thing. And here, at least, again, I see a huge difference between Estonia and Latvia, that Estonians are usually covering each other's back more than we are. And because Estonians are proud to support their own startups, their own companies, and then they are proud of that, and they love to buy those products. But I haven't seen this trend in Latvians, and this is something that we should think about more, how we can support each other rather than, oh, this is Latvia, no, it will be bad, I will try maybe to use some other product. So this is something that is still there, and I think by the change of society, this will become better, but I think we should also support that and help to change the mindset.
Sorry, I just wanted to say that I think like the patriotism, or like I think the idea that working locally can make things better is really important, and I think that that actually is why I'm not. It's not a question like how many or when will be the next unicorns, but it's going to be a matter of normality, because I think like especially again like looking more at the Estonian startup founders, big ones whom I know, they are all very proud to invest back and want to invest back, and I think that's sort of a feeling that that because we are like working in so small societies, you know, everybody can have an impact on what is the environment where we live in, is actually like a huge bonus, because if you are a citizen of the United States of America, maybe you have less of an impact in how your country is going to come across. So anyway, I think from that point of view, it's really a done deal. I mean, there's going to be plenty unicorns growing from here, and actually there is also, I think, you know, enough founders who will make sure that they will invest back and put money into those new founders to make that happen.
I guess I don't have much to add. I guess I can probably summarize what guys said here, right, and lady, right. So basically, I guess one thing is to get those people inspired, right, to get them more ambitious, to get them excited about an entrepreneurship, and even if there's only 9%, right, then getting to these 9%, right, getting those sort of soft and hard skills they need and knowledge they need, right, and then I guess the other colleagues from the VC world, right, said we're kind of having the capital there, right, and then probably being more patriotic and giving back, right, will help and to us get to sort of overcome Israel, right, as the startup hub in Europe.
So effectively, they had Draugiem, which is still functioning, and then okay, there are a few other projects which from these 100 which are doing quite well. But the Printful, so in a way, it's two. It's Draugiem, and now it's Printful, the big what it seems to be big success. And do you think you will go ahead and find another one or several new potential unicorns in, I don't know, next 20 years?
No, we certainly hope so, right? Draugiem Group, Printful was born out of business incubator in Draugiem Group called IdeaBits. Now Printful has its own business incubator called Printful Bits, right? And we are constantly evaluating business ideas and testing them out, right? We have a team working on that, and then hopefully someone will become unicorn in sort of unicorn, yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Maybe one thing to add, that the Estonian founders and those who have a lot of money now, but they also have a great impact, social impact to society. So they not try to buy something from government to get more good contracts, but otherwise they want to be economy more open and give a pressure to government to do this, and they show as they do, they show to younger founders and to other members of society how to earn money and how to react to responsibility, more responsible.
Yeah, of which the new coding school, which the startup community in Estonia started, is a great example. And actually, that's one last point I wanted to make about culture as well. So I think one of the things that's very important that is definitely prevalent in Latvia is to change the mindset about what it means to be a business founder, a businessman, because that has had a bad connotation. And actually, I'd really like you to think about starting a business as an act of social generosity, because those people who are starting businesses, when they're successful, they create jobs. And 90% of the population is going to be a job taker, not a job giver. They're going to be employees, not employers. And so those people who create businesses that create jobs are actually fundamentally important for our society to grow and improve, and for many people to have a great life, right? And so that is, there's some negative connotations often around people who are in business, and actually it is a very, very important function in society for people to be able to create jobs. And it's entrepreneurs that create jobs. It's not governments. It's entrepreneurs who build businesses that then employ others.
Okay, thank you. I think it's a very good point, unless anyone else has some closing remarks. But now we take some questions, I hope. Prudential in '99, which is almost 23 years ago, and at the beginning, we have been all the time. Most of our employees have come from SSC. We have found them to be the best quality and most ready for work, so to say, to work in our investment banking field. But what we have noticed is that at the beginning, everyone in the SSC wanted to work in the finance industry. And then after 2008, it started to change. Everyone wanted to kind of was ready to accept lower startups. So I hope there is plenty of questions for you, because we have such a great panel and with the distinguished people in the field. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for the great insights. So today we talk a lot about positive things, which was really good. But what's happening now around the neighborhood is also a big concern. And we talk about the capital flow, about the market, and also all startup environments. So what's the impact of what's going on in the neighborhood and to the Baltic startup ecosystem and how the capital market is like doing so. Is it going out of like Baltic countries, or is it coming? And what can Baltic countries do in order to kind of help those startups that they were kind of shut dead, like especially in like Ukraine, like there were like lots of cool startups, but now they are like not active. So yeah.
So the question is about the red elephant in the neighborhood. So, so what's our?
We are sort of in a capital raising mode at the moment, so I can tell you from my personal experience how I view it. I think sort of like talking about risk, certainly if you live in a border area anywhere, you are always need to sort of think about like, you know, the events that are, I don't know, some kind of probability that will happen with you. And if you adopt to that mindset that you constantly are worried about that tail end, then you will never do anything. So, and I think like my response whenever we are having like sort of talks with co-founders or investors is that actually the best thing that we can do is act normal, and we invest back to make our societies better, and by that we basically increase the security. And I think, you know, from a sort of a startup point, when we talk about global startups like Bolts or Wises or Pipedrives or whatever, I mean, they are inherently, okay, lots of people are working in the Baltics, but inherently they are not really, I think, deemed as you know, Baltic risk, right? So I think, you know, I think we should support Ukraine as much as we can. We should support people who want to, you know, if they, you know, need to relocate to the Baltics, to give them all the means that they can develop their companies here. And ourselves, we should invest to make our society so much better than that. There is actually always, we will always have allies who will help us.
Any more reflections on this question?
Yeah, so I would say that over the past month we have seen some investors express some concerns. Not that many, and I think my guess is it will be more like the beginning of the pandemic, where the first 2 months everyone was deer in the headlights. Oh my God, what's happening? Let's just stop and not do anything and wait till we figure out what's going on. So, so I think there will be some slowdown, and we do see that in some of the conversations with investors that our companies are having. In the medium to long term, I'm very bullish. I think we'll be even safer than we were before.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, I think overall the Baltic peoples have been 2 times had to destroy the Russian Empire. If we're going to be involved in this, we're going to do the 3rd time.
So I'll answer what I think. So I think one of the big advantages we have is that we are small countries, right? So if you have the ambition to build a big business, it's very hard or takes a very long time to build it just in these local markets. So if you want to do that, you typically need to be, quote, born global and start in other markets. And you know, like our Planet 42 guys did in South Africa, like you know, many of the successful startups have been starting outside the local markets, and that gives you a fundamental advantage against competitors who may have started in a large market, been successful in that large market, have adapted all of their processes, products, activities to being successful in that market, but suddenly then find that actually going to a different market is a really big challenge, and having a multilingual, multi-market, multi-customer base approach is a fundamentally different way of thinking about a business, and it makes it much harder. So the great example I always give is, all of the Polish VC funds are coming to the Baltic states to invest, and they all complain to me that they don't have enough startups in Poland to invest. And why? Because they say all the Polish guys, well, they're happy building a 20 to 40 million valuation business in Poland, because you can do that. It's a big enough market. But then getting outside of Poland, that's a whole different story, right? And so I think that advantage it's exactly the same one Israel has, right? So you cannot build a massive, massive business just with the Israeli market, and so you have to go outside. So you get pushed out of your comfort zone, you get comfortable with many different markets, many different customers, and that's a fundamental advantage that small countries all over the world have, right? And which I think we need to harness.
Thank you for that, Sam. Firstly, our advantage is that we belong to Western world. We are in the EU open market, and also maybe third countries from the West are understanding that we are belonging to their world. In the same time, as a more or less young market and young country, we are more, as a society, business society, we are more flexible, faster running, and we are more hungry to win the game in the market. And that's I'm talking about my business, how we win the Western European markets, because we came as young, hungry guys from European Union, but no one knows us. But we came to the market where the companies were sleepy, quite rich companies, but very sleepy, very slowly moving, and so on. And in 10 years, everything turned upside down. And the big aim for us also is not to become such sleepy and too confident.
So stay hungry, stay foolish, and turn the defect into effect. Okay. Now, next question.
Thank you. So hello again, and I may have another question more about the early stage, about seed and pre-seed. So how do you actually, when you might not have any revenues, how do you do the valuation of the company, and do you say some approximations to the investors, or do you just say that I don't know, let the market decide, or how does it happen?
I guess this is for me. So there is a market for very early stage companies. In fact, if you look at our website, we publish a Baltic Startup Funding Report twice a year, where we actually we ask all of the founders who we know have closed rounds in this region, and about 60% of them actually give us the data on the valuations and terms of their funding rounds in confidence, and we publish the aggregate statistics. And so you can actually see roughly what the market is. And so there's ballpark, metrics that you can see, and so, there's kind of rules of thumb, effectively, you could say. And so, our typical pre-seed investments are something like, 3 to 4 million pre-money valuation, right? But those averages hide significant variations as well, right? So, we backed one of the founders of Lithuania's first unicorn, on a PowerPoint, at a valuation that was generous, right? Because the guy's got tons of experience, and there's a higher likelihood of success. So there's obviously a bunch of different ranges around there, but it's a rule of thumb market, and ultimately the market is, if the founder's happy with the terms offered and the investor is happy with the terms offered, you have a market price, right? But it's not a stock market, right? It's not a public price, it's a private market. but it does function in some form as a market.
Okay, any more questions? Here.
Hello, thank you for the great discussion again. So my question is, I heard somewhere between the lines it was said about that 3 Baltic states could do it together. So my question is, how exactly could that happen? So either through some government cooperation or through some education initiatives established in all 3 countries, or through some pan-Baltic funds like Change Ventures, or some other way? And a bit of a funny question, will Estonia be willing to share the fame with Latvia and Lithuania in that case? Thank you.
I can say, just to kick off this discussion that is going to follow about this, but I just wanted to say that SSC Riga is the answer. You know, you look at many of the alumni who I have had the pleasure of studying together or known over the years, and many of them have teamed up and are investors in each other's projects, or so on and so forth. So actually, this has been the biggest contributor, I think, in terms of real kind of a business connections, and I hope that's will be for years and years.
I can say that from stock exchange perspective, we've been building Baltic market since 20 years ago, and I'd say we have now succeeded because pretty much every single offering is happening on a Baltic level. It's truly Baltic investor base, the same example of Virši, Latvian company. Half of the investors came from Estonia, and it works on both ways. So, example of good cooperation between the Baltic countries, putting aside any maybe national agendas or things like that. A short comment to the previous question. Why here? I can only say from personal experience that more you travel around, more you appreciate the privilege being born here and being, able to grow up your children here. It's a fantastic place. The combination that we've got in terms of economic opportunities, development, nature, education, you name it. It's really quite unique. It's a great place to, also live and develop businesses out of the Baltics.
Regarding Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, as we, Prudentia, we are working in all 3 countries, and when we are visiting our partners in Europe, we are talking that we are the Baltic company, offices in Tallinn, Riga, and Vilnius. So it's there is a lot of other companies. VC funds, they are working in all 3 countries. So it's like more a region, or not a state, but a region altogether.
Yeah, I would like to say that several hundred million in VC and private equity funds already are looking investments at the same time in the Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, and plenty of companies have add-ons and relationships, and for example, right now, to a large extent, the development, real estate development in Riga, strangely enough, is done by Lithuanian and Estonian companies, which are the big developers at the moment for a number of reasons. And so I think it has taken some time and for us, a generation in the getting back to the civilization, so to say, but now we understand we are small players and we better play together, and we have a effect because we can see how the neighbors are doing that, and each of the neighbors has somewhat different focus, but then we have different synergies, and some of the things, each of us do some things better. And I agree, SSC has been very, very good and very high grade university in the business, and which has helped really, I think, to develop this interconnectivity in the Baltics. And I think because it doesn't hamper, it doesn't take away. I think a lot as well as a lot of Estonian investors in Latvia and Lithuanians and vice versa. So, okay, we have at least one more question. Yeah. Oh, okay. 3 last questions, but very quickly. No. It's a gentleman over there and the 2 people there. The ladies first. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks a lot. So, coming back to the question about the war in Ukraine and Russia, I just wanted to bring one topic. So, do you think will it affect the attractiveness of the region for international investors? Because we've seen Sequoia, Andreessen, and everybody coming here, exploring the region and looking at the companies. So do you think the threat that something can happen here, basic threat, will affect the amount of funding that we're getting here for the companies? And probably they will be assigning like higher risk premium to the companies, or they will be negotiating a lower valuation for the founders. So do you think it will have some effect from the perspective of international investors or like big players like Andreessen, Sequoia, and others?
Maybe I'll take on this again, and I really want to underline how important actually local investment already is into the startup and second round financing. I think sort of the amount of capital that has been, the wealth that has been generated over the last 10 years or more is significant. So we are actually self-sustained and pretty much can be self-sustained. I mean, the investors that come in, especially in the startup community, I think they bring in networks which are extremely important to drive up those companies' valuations and to get more funding to do even greater things. But as a base case, I think, I don't know, like, and Andris can say that maybe I'm totally wrong here because he sees it from the venture capital point of view, but I really see that there is a lot of people who are born here, who kind of have made the money and who are happy to invest back. So, and if the competition gets less, then maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah, it'll make my life easier. So I really don't. I actually think that for Sequoias, Andreessens, and tech venture investors, I don't see an issue. As I said, maybe a short pause. Don't see an issue. It's not my segment, but I do wonder whether there will be an impact on valuation and investment in businesses that have significant physical operations here, infrastructure projects and so forth. You know, those could well see, you know, the others on this panel would have a better idea of whether they will see a political risk premium. You know, the thing about startups is, to a large extent, I mean, in the worst case, you can literally like fly the company out of the country and it still operates. All the data's in the cloud, the customers are largely elsewhere, the local market's not a sizable part of the business usually. So like for tech startups, even the worst case scenario is actually relatively benign, right?
Makes sense. I also had conversations with some German VCs, and they're like, oh, we're not looking into the region because we're like a bit afraid. So I guess less competition is something that we can expect.
Yeah, they're missing something out.
Yeah.
Basically, good evening to everyone. Thank you for the discussion. Other practical ones. So basically, we talked about how to raise local unicorns, and as I understood from the discussion, basically one of the reasons is raising awareness for students, for young people towards entrepreneurship. Basically, my kind of question is, could we maybe outline practical steps for SSC Riga student or any other Baltic states university student to obtain the exposure to the local startup ecosystem? For example, Andris, you mentioned the Tech Hub Riga meetings. I think several of you also talked about the possibility that pupils in schools create their own like small businesses, but maybe there are any other practical steps that anybody here could do the next day.
So Tech Hub Riga
Start in LV is the Startup Association. You know, you can find the startups in Latvia pretty easily doing a little bit of Googling. If you can't, then you're less qualified to be hired by them, right? So it's not that hard to find them, and they're all looking for talented employees, right? So we have a portfolio page on our website. All of those companies are looking for talented people. So, you know, the community is pretty open, and you know it's pretty easy to find those links. And then you want to go to those meetups. You want to go meet startups, write them. You know, find those opportunities.
Just sort of reading and following what's happening in the world, right? I mentioned Podcast Acquired. I guess that's a very good one. Obviously, it talks about large companies, successful companies, but takes through their stories, etc. Right? There's also how I built this, right? So I think there's quite a bit of content, right? And as we are in a sort of digital age, right, you should have access to all of it, and that will also help you just to maybe think bigger and see how others did it. So maybe that inspires you as well.
Because startups are relatively small. You bring to the party, so to say, and yeah, just be interested and then jump in, and then you'll learn to swim. You'll see what they're striving for, and what are the skills which are valued, and where you can be in the picture. That's the same way. Okay. You still have a question?
My question was kind of answered.
Okay. So, that is the last one.
Hello. Thanks for the panel for the interesting discussion. One of the most important things was culture. I wanted to deal with the legal structure. The panel mentioned it quite favorably, the stock options, and for me personally, EU residency in Estonia for firms, that's good. But what is the most pressing issue, and what can Baltics grow here in legal means? What is missing?
So I'm going to be the eternal optimist, and again tell you some good stories. So we invest in companies that are tightly connected to the Baltics, but we don't care where the headquarters is, you know, legally. So we've invested in the U.S., in Germany, in Spanish headquartered companies, and in Baltic headquartered companies. By a country mile, the Baltics are easier than anything else in Europe, certainly. So US and UK, pretty straightforward Anglo-Saxon legal systems, very well developed. Spain and Germany are an absolute expletive word disaster. Very, very difficult to do business there. And so, you know, so relatively speaking again, we're in a very good position, you know, very digitally advanced, much more simple environments. Having said that, there are things we can improve. So one of the things I would like to do is see companies have the option to not use the local notary service if they would like to, and use DocuSign or whatever other, you know, means they would like to use. It is permissible in Estonia now for companies with 10,000 euro share capital or more if they decide to do so. I'd definitely like to see that in Latvia and Lithuania as well.
I can just add that really, if you think about like sort of a, you know, as a founder, where should you start your company? Don't worry about it. I mean, but Baltics is a really good case. I can bring another example, like how we, in Indexo, we created another class of shares, which had never been done in Latvia before, never been registered in a company register, and we managed to do it in like 2 months. So actually talking sense to the regulators, to the business register, and so on and so forth, and we managed to solve it.
Okay. Thank you. Let's give a round of applause. Thank you, and let's hope that we're going to be able to fund and invest in many promising companies and grow them big and make lots of money, and you will participate in this process. So Thank you, and let's look forward to it.